One fighter deal has put Canada on a collision course with Washington, where software, sovereignty, and power decide whether allies remain partners or become dependents. One fighter deal has placed Canada on a collision course with Washington, where software, sovereignty, and power decide whether allies remain partners or quietly become dependents. What looks like a procurement debate is actually a struggle over who controls the future of Canadian air power. The Pentagon has warned Ottawa against walking away from its F-35 agreement. Officials in Washington have made it clear canceling or reshaping the deal will not be consequence-free. Behind closed doors, this is not being treated as a commercial issue. It is being treated as a strategic defection, and in geopolitics, defection is never forgiven easily. Canada is not just buying fighter jets, it is choosing a political alignment that could define its sovereignty for decades. The story did not start this year. It began more than a decade ago when Ottawa first considered joining the F-35 program without open competition. That decision triggered backlash from citizens, analysts, and defense experts who warned that Canada was locking itself into a system it did not fully control. After years of delays, audits, and political shifts, Canada formally selected the F-35 inches 2023, 88 aircraft, deliveries starting in 2026. Completion by 2032, it looked settled. Then, the numbers changed. A national audit revealed that the original price was incomplete. Once infrastructure, weapons, integration, training, and long-term operation were included, the bill could climb toward 33 billion Canadian dollars, a 75% increase. For a middle power with limited defense spending, that kind of shock changes everything. At the same moment, relations with Washington grew colder, trade pressure increased, tariff threats returned, even rhetoric questioning Canadian independence re-entered political discourse. To Ottawa, this was not just economic pressure. It was a reminder of imbalance. When your defense depends on another power's software, parts, and permissions, your sovereignty is conditional. Then came Sweden. In 2025, Canada and Sweden signed a defense cooperation framework focused on Arctic security. Saab, Sweden's defense giant, offered something radically different from Lockheed Martin. Not just jets, but industrial control. Gripen fighters assembled on Canadian soil. Technology transfer, domestic upgrades, thousands of aerospace jobs. For the first time, the debate stopped being about aircraft performance. It became about national autonomy. When Canada's defense minister announced in 2025 that the F-35 deal was being re-examined, Washington reacted immediately. Pentagon officials and defense executives realized that what they thought was locked could unravel. This was not about losing a customer, it was about losing leverage. To understand why this matters, you have to understand how modern weapons work. The F-35 is not a plane in the traditional sense. It is a flying software platform. Every sensor fusion, every data link, every combat decision is controlled by code that is owned and updated by the United States. Canada does not control that code. With rare exceptions, no one does. If updates stop, performance decays. Over time, the aircraft becomes obsolete while still sitting on the runway. Supporters of the F-35 argue that nothing matches its combat power. They point to classified evaluations where it dominated competitors in mission effectiveness and future upgrade potential. For military leadership, superiority is survival. They warn that mixed fleets create logistical chaos and battlefield risk. But critics ask a different question. Superior for whom, and for what war? Canada is not preparing for global power competition. Its core missions are Arctic patrol, airspace defense, and allied operations. Does it truly need the world's most complex stealth platform to fly over frozen coastlines and remote territories? The Gripen offers something else: lower operating costs, short runway capability, designed for extreme environments, and most importantly, ownership. Saab has promised Canada the right to modify, repair, and upgrade its own aircraft without asking permission from Washington. That promise is what alarms the Pentagon. Because power in modern warfare is not only firepower, it is dependency. It is control over parts, software, data, and training. It is knowing that in a crisis, someone else decides whether your weapons stay alive. This is why Washington is warning Canada, not because of jets, but because of what those jets represent. A country deciding whether it will own its weapons or merely rent them, whether it will be protected by alliance or controlled by it. And as delivery deadlines approach, the clock is no longer political. It is operational. Canada must choose, soon, who truly commands its skies. To grasp why this decision terrifies Washington, you have to follow the chain of control that modern fighter programs create. The F-35 is marketed as a jet, but in reality, it is a networked weapons ecosystem. Sensors, radar, electronic warfare, and targeting data are fused by software that lives far beyond the cockpit. That software is written, updated, and authorized in the United States. Operators do not own it. They are licensed to use it. Every F-35 operator depends on a global logistics and data system once called ALIS, now replaced by Odin. It tracks parts, maintenance, diagnostics, and mission data. If a component fails, the system decides what part is needed and where it comes from. If a fault is detected, the system flags it. This means the aircraft's health is monitored through a network controlled by the program owner. In practice, that owner is Washington. Canada would fly its F-35 seconds, but Washington would manage their digital lifeline. Without continuous updates, sensor fusion degrades, threat libraries grow outdated, data links lose relevance. No enemy needs to shoot the aircraft down. Time alone can disable it. Supporters of the F-35 argue this is the price of belonging to the most advanced air combat system ever built. They point to stealth design, sensor fusion, and networking that allows a single aircraft to see, target, and share information across the battlefield. In high-intensity war, this is decisive. An F-35 does not fight alone. It acts as a flying command node. In NATO operations, this matters. Shared systems mean shared awareness. Canadian jets can plug directly into American, British, and European networks. Missiles, drones, ships, and satellites all feed into one picture. Interoperability is power. But interoperability has a cost. It requires standardization. Standardization requires control, and control flows toward whoever owns the software, the codes, and the update cycle. Now compare that to the Gripen. It is not as stealthy. It does not dominate in every classified category. But it was built with a different philosophy. It was designed for small states that expect to fight near home with limited infrastructure and harsh conditions. It can operate from short roads. It can be serviced by small teams. Its systems are open enough that customers can modify them. Saab's offer to Canada went further. Full assembly in Canada, technology transfer, domestic upgrade authority. This is not just about jobs. It is about deciding what happens when systems break, when new threats appear, and when alliances strain. From a tactical perspective, the differences are clear. The F-35 excels in penetrating defended airspace, using stealth and sensors to locate targets before being detected. The Gripen excels in dispersed operations, fast turnaround, and flexibility in harsh environments like the Arctic. One is built for global power projection, the other is built for territorial defense. Operating cost is another fault line. Estimates put the Gripen's cost per flight hour near $8,000. The F-35 ranges from $35,000 to $47,000 depending on variant and accounting method. Over decades, that gap becomes strategic. Money spent on flying is money not spent on ships, drones, cyber, or space systems. Then there is the question of upgrades. With the F-35, upgrade schedules are set by the program office. Operators wait for blocks of software that roll out according to American priorities. With Gripen, Saab offers customers the ability to integrate weapons, sensors, and software independently. That means faster adaptation to regional threats. But independence is never absolute. The Gripen's engine is American-made. Export licenses come from Washington. Even if Canada builds the airframe, components pass through U.S. authority. As Ottawa weighed its options, pressure intensified from directions the public rarely sees. Lobbyists, defense contractors, trade officials, and intelligence partners began moving quietly, shaping narratives about risk, loyalty, and consequence. This was no longer a debate about jets, it was about alignment. Inside Canada, competing interests emerged. Aerospace unions favored Saab's promise of domestic assembly. Military leadership favored the F-35's battlefield dominance. Business executives feared retaliation from U.S. partners. Banks and insurers studied how sanctions or trade penalties could ripple through supply chains. Every faction understood the same truth. Whatever Ottawa chose would anger someone powerful. Beyond official diplomacy, intelligence channels became active. Defense cooperation is tied to data sharing. Satellite feeds, early warning radar, signals, intelligence, and cyber defense are not given freely. They are exchanged through trust and alignment. Analysts warned that if Canada appeared to drift too far from Washington, access could become slower, more selective, or quietly conditional. This is how pressure works in the modern world, not with ultimatums, but with delays, reviews, and technical issues. A radar upgrade postponed, a software patch slowed, an intelligence briefing that arrives later than usual, none of it is announced. But every commander notices. At the same time, criminal and gray market networks were watching closely. Large weapons programs create massive logistics chains, metals, electronics, fuel, software, transport, and training. Wherever value moves at this scale, intermediaries appear. Consultants, brokers, and subcontractors began positioning themselves around both the F-35 and Gripen paths. Some promised access. Some promised speed. Some promised influence. These networks do not wear uniforms. They operate through shell companies, offshore accounts, and political donations. Their interest is not sovereignty, it is profit. If Canada shifted suppliers, new contracts would open. Old ones would close. For those who live between legality and corruption, transition is opportunity. Leaks soon followed. Technical evaluation scores from the earlier competition surfaced in the media. They showed the F-35 far ahead in performance metrics. This was not random. Leaks are tools. They shape perception. They remind decision makers what they stand to lose. Military leaders used those numbers to argue for certainty. They warned that mixed fleets would fracture training, double costs, and complicate combat command. In wartime, simplicity saves lives. Two systems mean two doctrines, two maintenance cultures, two supply chains. In crisis, that complexity can become lethal. Supporters of the Gripen answered with a different warning. They said absolute superiority is meaningless if you cannot sustain it. A perfect aircraft grounded by cost, parts, or politics is worse than a good aircraft that always flies. Then came the engine problem. Even if Canada built Gripens domestically, the engine would still come from the United States. Export licenses could be delayed or denied. Washington would still hold a lever. This revealed the deeper truth. In globalized defense industries, total independence is almost impossible. Some analysts suggested retaliation scenarios, tariffs on Canadian exports, reduced defense contracts, pressure within NATO. Even quiet challenges to Canada's role in NORAD, the Joint Air Defense Command that protects North America. None of these would be announced as punishment. They would be explained as strategic adjustments. Ottawa now faced a paradox. The more it sought independence, the more it risked isolation. The more it clung to alliance, the more it accepted dependency. There was no clean path. As delivery of the first 16 F-35 seconds approached, time compressed. Canceling them would be costly. Accepting them would lock in systems, training, and infrastructure that made change harder later. Every runway upgrade, every simulator, every pilot trained created momentum. Saab proposed a compromise, but a mixed fleet creates dangerous complexity. By early 2026, the decision space had narrowed. Canada would accept the first 16 F-35 seconds, already paid for and already in production. That choice alone reshaped training pipelines, maintenance contracts, and infrastructure across Canadian bases. Once pilots begin flying a platform, doctrine follows. Once doctrine follows, replacement becomes politically and operationally painful. The jet is no longer just a purchase, it becomes a system that reorganizes everything around it. At the same time, negotiations continued behind closed doors. Ottawa pushed Washington for stronger industrial participation, more guaranteed maintenance work, and clearer rules about long-term software support. Officials wanted written assurances that updates would never be used as political leverage. The Pentagon answered carefully. It spoke of alliance, trust, shared values, and mutual security, but avoided binding language that would limit American control over its own systems. Talks with Saab never stopped. European partners quietly encouraged Canada to keep its options open, not to break from NATO, but to balance it. They argued that diversity of suppliers strengthens resilience. If one supply chain is disrupted, another can compensate. In a world of cyber attacks, sanctions, and great power rivalry, redundancy is survival. Strategists inside Canada began to frame the issue in generational terms. The jets chosen today will still be flying in the 2050 seconds. They will shape how Canada fights, who it fights with, and how independent it can be in crisis. This is not a 4-year political decision. It is a 40-year strategic commitment. For Washington, the stakes are just as high. The F-35 program is not only a weapon, it is a web of alliances. Every partner that flies it is tied into American standards, data flows, and upgrade cycles. This creates a quiet hierarchy. Those who control the system shape the battlefield before the first shot is fired. Losing a major partner weakens that structure. Globally, other states are watching. Middle powers in Asia, Europe, and the Middle East face the same dilemma as Canada. Buy into a dominant system and gain unmatched capability, but accept dependence, or choose more modest platforms and retain control at the risk of inferiority. Canada's choice will become a case study. There is also a wider shift taking place. Warfare is moving from hardware to software, from steel to code. Tanks, jets, and ships are now platforms for data. Whoever owns the code owns the weapon. This means sovereignty is no longer just about territory. It is about access, updates, and permissions. In this new world, alliances are not just treaties. They are operating systems. They decide who can see what, who can connect to whom, and who can fight as part of the network. Refusing an operating system does not mean leaving the alliance, but it does mean accepting friction inside it. Canada now stands at that point of friction. If it stays fully inside the F-35 system, it gains unmatched integration but accepts that some decisions will always be made elsewhere. If it pivots toward greater domestic control, it gains autonomy but risks losing seamless access to allied power. There is no perfect answer. Every path carries cost. What matters is honesty about those costs. Saying yes to alliance means saying yes to hierarchy. Saying yes to autonomy means saying yes to risk. As the first F-35 seconds prepare to land on Canadian runways, the visible story will be about aircraft. The invisible story will be about power. Who can turn systems on? Who can turn them off? Who decides when an ally becomes a client? They will judge whether Canada traded independence for comfort or kept control in uncertain times ahead. Canada's fighter decision is not about metal and engines. It is about who controls data, power, and choice in war. Washington is watching, allies are calculating, and Ottawa is deciding its future. If this analysis helped you think, like the video, subscribe to the Northern Frame, and share below now.